Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel Layout to Lineside. Today we're doing a comparison video between some rather important coaches from, of course, Hornby and Bachmann. So today we're looking at what both companies offer in the way of Mk1s. So I might have got one or two or like 6 Mk1s. Now, I will just say, these Bachmann Mk1s I do not believe are representative of the most recent models. However, they're all that I have, so we're going to be taking a look at all of these today. Yeah, I probably didn't need quite this many. So, this obviously begs the question, which models have I got to do the comparison with? Well, for Hornby, we have a Mk1 second open coach, and that's in the BR maroon livery. Then we have again, obviously a Mk1 in the carmine and cream livery, and this time it is a corridor composite brake. Finally, for Hornby, then we have another carmine and cream coach, this time though just a second class corridor. For Bachmann coaches, I first have another maroon coach, this time a first class corridor. Then, for a bit of variety, one of my green coaches, and this is another brake composite corridor. And finally, I've got, for even more variety, a restaurant or buffet coach, again in a maroon livery. Okay, so moving on, for the sake of the unboxing, we're just going to be concentrating on 2 coaches, and those are the brake composites. So, for the time being, we'll push all the other coaches off to the side and take a look at these. Now, I will just point out again, all the coaches we're looking at today are second-hand, but I've tried to pick a couple of coaches which will be fairly representative of what you get if you were to buy one of these brand new. So, firstly, we'll start with the Bachmann coach. And yeah, this is in a rather old tatty box. Obviously, if you bought one new now, you'd get one in a new box. However, the first thing you will notice here is the very hefty accessories bag. So, in this bag of accessories, we have one corridor cover. I'm guessing that'd be for the brake compartment end of the coach. 2 close couplers, and I believe a pair of lamps, or no, just one lamp, which you could fit to the end of the coach. There's also there's something else in there which I'm not actually sure what that is. But yeah, so fairly hefty accessories bag, and yeah, quite a few things you can fit to the coach if you do so desire. Then the coach itself, quite well protected. As you can see at a glance, it is quite well detailed. One thing to note with these Bachmann Mk1s is they do have stepped couplings. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, they do have stepped couplings. I know some people aren't very fond of Bachmann stepped couplings, but yes, their Mk1s do have stepped couplings. So if you don't like those, then that may be a reason not to go with them. Personally, I don't really mind them since I use NEM pockets for most of my coaches. Onto the Hornby coach. Oh, blimey. This box is a lot tighter, and right off the bat you'll notice no accessory pack here. I can't remember if it came with one and I've just lost it. As far as I'm aware, you don't really get much in the way of accessories with these Hornby coaches, though if you want close couplings or whatnot, you have to buy those separately. Then, again, at a glance, the detailing on these Hornby coaches aren't quite as good. However, they don't use stepped couplings, which is a good thing, as far as most people will be concerned. So, yeah, that's what you get in the boxes for these coaches. Now I'll unbox the rest of these and we can take a closer look at all of them. Now, before I go any further, I would just like to point out that any opinions I state in this video are mine and mine only. As a channel with only 59 subscribers at the time of filming, you're not going to get sponsorship deals. However, that aside, yes, I Honestly, coming into this, would have thought that Bachmann would win detail hands down, but I've been surprised by how much Hornby's coaches have going for them. So we have Hornby's coaches on this side and Bachmann's coaches on this side. So, starting off with the said detail, in an area where Bachmann undoubtedly won, is the roof. So these handrails are separately fitted wire on Bachmann's model, as are the periscopes housings. They are also separately fitted. If I pull in a Hornby coach though, you will see that that is all just moulded and really just doesn't have the same relief to it. And if I pull in two more coaches, you'll see the same thing with the wires. On Hornby's, they're moulded, and on Bachmann's, they're separately fitted. However, I do think that the colour of the roof on Hornby's maroon Mk1s in particular is more realistic than that of Bachmann's. If you see the difference, there's quite a considerable difference there for me, and I'll pull up an image of a real Mk1, probably one of my clips off my channel to avoid copyright issues. Yeah, personally I think Hornby's shade is more realistic, as is a slightly more matte finish. However, yes, on the whole, for the roof detailing, Bachmann wins it for me. The detailing on the ends, I'd say there's a bit less in it. As you can see, Bachmann's is decently well detailed. Of course, the weathering on this coach may make it stand out a little more, but yeah, for me there's a decent level of detail there. Honestly, Hornby's coach is about the same really, perhaps if not a bit better. I did notice that Hornby's coach seemed to have some small bits of detail which Bachmann's didn't, but I'd say for the ends are about equal. I did notice the difference in the colour of the gangway doors. I believe these are both realistic, although for the most part Hornby's black actually seems to be a bit more realistic. So I don't know, maybe Bachmann had access to better photos than I did. It's quite hard to see gangways in the photos I've looked at online, since they're usually coupled to other coaches. One area where for me there is no clear-cut winner is the sides of the bodies. So both coaches rely very heavily on moulded detail here, and on Bachmann's the doors have a lot more definition, whereas Hornby's look like they've sort of been lost during the painting stage. But then on the other hand, when you look at the window frames, Bachmann's look rather chunky, whereas Hornby's are quite refined. So one area where Hornby did win it for me is the underframe. So if I pull up one of these coaches, you'll see underframe moulding looks quite fine. I'd say for the most part, the moulding on Hornby's coaches, it relies very heavily on the moulding, but the moulding is quite fine for the most part. Whereas on Bachmann's, I honestly think the detailing on the underframe is a bit coarser. I'll try to pull it up so you can see both on screen at the same time. Honestly, I think the underframe detailing on Bachmann's isn't quite as fine. So, overall on detail, I'd say Bachmann coaches win it for me. One thing I didn't notice at first is many of these details on the roof of the restaurant coach are also separately fitted parts. So whilst Bachmann's models, in my opinion, do have slightly less fine moulding, they get away with it because they don't rely as heavily on the moulding as Hornby's models do. So, now, I believe I've yapped on for long enough about detail and liveries. It's time to get this lot down onto the track. I'd love to run them all as one train, but I think it'll be too long, so what we'll probably do is get the Hornby coaches set up on one line and the Bachmann ones on the other. So, finally comes the bit where we just get to run trains, and on a quick side note, I have been trying to get the layout to a more substantial scenic stage, so you will notice a bit more static grass and ballast in some places, and over here I'm trying to get the retaining wall in place, which is going to cover up the foam along the back. But anyway, moving back to the review, I have the West Country and Hornby Mk1s on the outside line, and on the inside line my Bachmann 3MT will be hauling the Bachmann Mk1s. I have tried to match the brand of the loco to the brand of the coaches, but I think I've yapped on for too long again. Time to run some trains. So, Bachmann versus Hornby Mk1s. Which should you buy? Well, both are undeniably good coaches with their own place in the market. Bachmann's models are better if you want a fairly premium coach and budget isn't a concern. They have slightly better detail and liveries than the Hornby coaches, and they're not quite as reliable. I do occasionally find the step coupling can cause issues, but this doesn't happen very often, and I think it's worth the occasional derailment for the fairly premium coaches that you would get, especially buying brand new. Hornby's coaches are just as good a choice if you're on a budget, and will also allow you, of course, to build up longer rakes without having to pay as much, and if I'm honest, they do work a little bit more reliably. Also, if you're shopping second-hand, then you may find that Bachmann's coaches aren't actually much more expensive, and that a good bargain can be picked up when you shop around. On the whole, both coaches are good, and as I said, both have their place on the market. Well, that will be it for today's video, and I think, yeah, both coaches definitely have pros and cons to them. Personally, I think both coaches are a good option, and really we are spoilt for choice here. Anyway, the next review video is hopefully going to be a locomotive, so stay tuned for that. If you want to be guaranteed not to miss it, why not subscribe? And if you want to see my last review video, that can be found in the top left-hand corner of your screen. But for now, I'll see you in the next video, and yeah, bye.